Hello, welcome again to Oscar Mike Radio. Oscar Mike Radio is about veterans, the military, active duty service members, and the people that support us. And I've had this string of artists on my show, primarily in the country music realm, and I'm pleased to be joined by Texas native, pop and country music star extraordinaire, Savannah Rae. Welcome to Oscar Mike Radio.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's great. It's great. Just I really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk with you. You've got some military connections, and you're from the great state of Texas. But before we do all that, before we get into your story and all this, I have to ask the question I ask all artists, and there's no special treatment. You don't get a pass. And I'm going to preface what the question is by saying I have a perfect record. So let's see if you're a trend breaker there, Savannah.
Oh goodness.
Now you've been doing this quite some time, right? You've been playing, singing, performing for quite some time, right?
Right, yes. I've been doing music professionally since I was 12, and so I'm 22 now. So it's been a decade.
It must have, wow, I can't wait to get into that. So you're not, this is not just something you picked up 6 months ago. You've devoted quite a bit of your life to it.
Right, yes, yep. It's been pretty much like half of my life now.
And so you sacrificed. I mean, you're
Right.
not only trying to do the normal things a person your age and just trying to work does, but there's things probably you've had to sacrifice, correct?
Oh, correct, hands down, for sure.
So, I like music myself. I'm more of a metalhead, just to give you the full background.
You'll be great friends with my mom then. So is she.
All right. And you know how like the Beatles and a couple of these people have sold their catalogs for like, I think, crazy money.
Sure.
So the question I'm kind of curious to start this whole party off with is, you've been doing this half your life, rehearsing, photography, videos, mastering, mixing, all the work that no one sees before you get out there. You've been doing it. Savannah, I've got a check for you for $100 million. I'll give you the check right now. I won't tell you if it'll clear or not, but I'll give it to you. If you take the check though, you can never perform again, ever. You're done with your career. You just fast forward to the good times and you're done being a musician. Do you take the money?
Definitely not.
And my record is perfect. Nobody wants to take the money. Now, why wouldn't you take the money, Savannah?
Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of music is what I love, and that's what I love to do. And, not being able to do that anymore far outweighs the want for any sort of materialistic thing, such as, money or fame or this, that, and the other. It's about the music first and foremost, and it always has been. And that's just, something that, I figured out that I wanted to do this when I was 12 years old, and that's pretty young. And I've dedicated half my life to doing it. And I'm like, well, I've gotten this far and I love it. So why not stop, and just having to stop something like that you dedicate your life to, that it's just, it doesn't even enter my mind, it's what I want to do. And any amount of money could never.
I am 0 and like 11 now. I mean, 11 artists have said in various ways, no, they wouldn't do it. So yeah. Let's go back to where this started, because I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. What happened when you're 12 that said, I want to do this? Like when I was 12, I didn't have that clarity. I was, into Transformers and G.I. Joe, to date myself. I wasn't even thinking about, computers and computer games. What made you say, I really want to do this?
Yeah, well, I probably have to credit that to my parents. My mom and my dad both have been very influential in just music in general. They have let me listen to everything since I came out the womb, basically. And they're like, hey, this is what we like. We hope you like it too, sort of thing. And, they gave me such a vast appreciation from everything from classical music to country to metal to 15th century lute music, you know, you name it, I've pretty much heard it and I have an appreciation for it. And so when I was around 10 years old, they started taking me to concerts, and that was such a blast. We would just go to concert every weekend sort of thing. And you know, I just started seeing all these people up on stage. I'm like, wow, that's so cool that these people are, you know, living their dream and doing music and stuff. And that's something that I just absolutely love. And so I specifically remember an instance where it was me and my mom. We went to an Evanescence concert in San Antonio. And I think I was around 11 years old. And I saw Amy Lee up on the stage, and she's the lead singer of Evanescence. And she just has such an incredible voice. She's
Oh
just
yeah.
so insanely talented. And I saw her and I was like, wow, that's so cool. That's what I want to do. And I turned to my mom. I was like, Mom, I want to be her, or I want to be like her, or just do something like her. And, you know, she took me very, very seriously when I said that. And so she's like, okay, well, you know, let's enroll you into some vocal lessons. Let's enroll you into some guitar lessons. And that was just kind of the beginning of everything for me.
So you go on to do this, and you know, I'm I gotta learn about who I'm talking about with, and you taken this, and you've been on The Voice, and you've met Demi Lovato, and you've done all that. I mean, what's that journey been like?
Sure. Yeah. I think for me, the journey has been very, very long, very long. Uh, I guess I have been doing this for 10 years. And while that may not seem like a super long amount of time, it's been a long time for me, just because, you know, those years are kind of like your formative years, right? Like that's when you're growing up. That's when you're deciding who you want to be and what you want to do. Well, at that point in time, I pretty much already decided what I want to do. And so I'm like, okay, well, nose to the grindstone, you know, let's do this and let's do it as best as we can. And so I've kind of been also in this weird area of, I grew up, you know, my interests are changing, my likes are changing. I've done all kinds of music from pop to rock to alternative to R&B to, I mean, even dabbled in some like show tunes, Broadway kind of stuff. But you know, being from Texas, I have that country in me. That's pretty much always been there. My two main influences, I would say, would be country and rock. And country is just kind of, that's just who I am. You know, I mean, I was 5 years old and I thought my dream job was going to be a horse trainer. That's what I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to go train them horses, until that kind of fizzled out and music took over, because that was my pretty much my first love. But you know, I'm kind of growing up in these different just years of my life, and my interests are changing, my music is changing. So I've kind of been across the board with everything that I've done, which is really, really cool. And it's given me such a just appreciation for all other types of music as well. But it's also given me some really cool experiences, like you said, such as, you know, being on The Voice, being able to sing backup for Demi Lovato on, you know, The Voice and the American Music Awards and stuff like that. Living out in LA, living out in Texas, living out in, you know, Nashville. I've kind of been there, done that all across the board. So it's definitely been a journey, and I've learned so much along the way. But I think now I'm finally kind of coming into myself, and, you know, figuring out my style and figuring out, you know, what I want to say and what I want my music to sound like. So I'm finally in a place where I'm like, okay, this is it. This is Savannah Rae.
All right, all right. So I checked out your single, "Typical Texas Woman," "Typical Texas Girl." Excuse me. I'm calling you. You're to me, you're not a girl. You're a young woman. So excuse me, but "Typical Texas Girl." But here's the thing. Now, I live like 8 miles from Texas, and I've been to Dallas, Lubbock, Waco, San Antonio, Houston, all that. I've been to Texas, a lot of Texas. And the thing is, so here's the question. People in my part of the country, I'm in the Northeast now, like New Englanders, they don't understand what Texas is, and how Texans believe that they're special because they got to be born in Texas.
Right.
And Texas itself is a very, like, someone in Dallas is going to have a different Texas experience than someone living in Houston. So
Right.
kind of unpack it for me a little bit, because I've lived in Texas. I've met several wonderful women, girls in Texas. Kind of explain to us what is the typical Texas woman, girl, when Texas is such a big, wonderful, diverse place.
Yeah, so I think that "Typical Texas Girl" was just a really fun song that I wrote with a couple of friends of mine, including Pam Tillis, which country music legend. Got to give her a shout out. She's awesome. And we kind of wrote it in the fact of kind of calling out some of the stereotypes that I think Texas girls sometimes have. Is, you know, sometimes they look
What
at
are
us
they?
and they're like, oh, the rhinestones and the big hair, and you know, they're just like, woo, flighty, all big and blonde, and just like I'm pretty sure I've been called dumb more times than I can count, you know, sort of thing. It's just all of these stereotypes that you can, like, some people think about it, and I'm like, no, no, not at all. Yeah, sure, we might like the big hair, sure, we might like the glitter and the rhinestones and all of that, but we're, you know, tough girls, and you know, we come from a place where we understand the value of a dollar, and you know, just some sort of things that are ingrained in us being from where we're being, you know, like I said, we may like all the outer materialistic, you know, woo, the Dolly Partons, all that, we love that, but at the same time, you know, we're strong and we're resilient and we have brains and we're a lot more than what you see, you know, on the outside. And I think that that song "Typical Texas Girl" is kind of a tribute to that, you know, never to judge a book by its cover.
Well, what I got out of it was because I've met some women who, you know, they go to church on Sunday, and you know they have their you know office job, teaching job, whatever. And let me tell you what, you know, when it's time to go hunt the wild boars that are, you know, messing with their dad's crops, they load the F-250 with the four-wheeler and the, you know, 30-30, and they're ready
Oh yeah.
to they're ready to, you know, hey, or
Oh
you know,
yeah.
right,
Oh
right,
yeah. Definitely. I mean, that's, you know, we have the pageant girls that can throw down, you know, we have the
yes.
rodeo queens that can go, you know, just tear it up. And that's what I think I love about just being a Texas girl, because we have those stereotypes. And sure, do we love it? Yeah. We love the hairspray. We say higher the hair, closer to God. But, you
Um,
know,
I don't know how you all do it. I mean, I can't, you know, I had no point of reference, but I am like, how in the world? And you got to understand, we're in Texarkana. It's 105 degrees outside, and not a strand of hair, Savannah, is out of place. Everything
Mhm.
is perfect. That takes effort.
It does. It really does. And see, but that's where the mental toughness comes in. You're like, I'm
Oh,
gonna sit here and I'm just gonna hairspray it all. And we're just gonna, it's just what it is. You know, it's like we're gonna work to look decent, but you know, we're also gonna work in other ways as well. And I think that's kind of the message of Typical Texas Girl. Like, yeah, we're typical. Sure. We like our, you know, like our big hair, but don't ever call us dumb, because that is the last thing that we are.
no, no, that's a mistake, and that's not wise to do. You've been doing this for effectively half your life,
Sure.
and you're not new at this.
Mhm.
I do wonder, is there a part of the whole creative performing songwriting process that you like more than other? Do you like performing more than songwriting? Do you like being in the studio? What part of this, you know, really lights your fire day by day? Because it can be a grind. So what keeps you going?
Yeah, I think every artist is different. You know, some people like songwriting more, some people like creating in the studio better, some people like live shows and everything. And I think I enjoy every part of it, but I would have to say that live shows are my bread and butter. I love being in the studio. I love creating. I love songwriting. I love doing all that. But I think that ultimately, when, you know, I'm creating all of these new songs, is I'm taking them out on the road. You know, I'm going to take them and play them for people, and then I'm going to, you know, have to judge their reactions from what I'm playing. I'm like, okay, well, I hope that, you know, they like it, sort of thing, because touring is just my favorite thing in the entire world. If I could be on tour every single day, I totally would. Like, it's just, it's
Really?
my favorite thing. It's just, I think the adrenaline rush, number one, you know, from being on stage, but also just connecting with people and meeting new people. And especially now that social media has become such a big presence in artists' lives now, you know, you can meet someone that comes to your show that you recognize, you know, from their pictures online. You recognize their username, and you're like, oh wow, it's really good to finally put, you know, a face to a name. It's so good to finally meet you. You know, it's so cool how that works. And I think that touring for me is just my number one and will always be.
Well, I'm checking out your YouTube channel, and you actually performed at a place I've been to several times, even though I live in New England, and that was the Boondocks in Columbia, Tennessee.
Hmm.
And I've seen a lot of good acts there, and it's a great little place to catch talent like yours, you know, playing. It's a really cool vibe. I mean, what happens when you're at a place like the Boondocks and there's people starting to dance as they start to get into what you're doing? What's that do to you when you start seeing people getting your vibe and really, bond with you?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the best feelings, and one of the best things about live shows is that you can kind of interact with the audience, but you can also really connect with them and kind of feed off of their energy. If they're, hooping and hollering, you're going to want to hoop and holler. If they're dancing around, you're going to want to go and dance around. And it's also really nice as a performer to see people dancing or see people, going crazy, going wild sort of thing, thinking that, okay, I'm doing a pretty good job at something here, I must be doing something right.
Well, that's part of it, right? So, you had a long day. You've gone through, setting up all the equipment. You've gotten off the bus, and you get up there, and the mic goes live, and you start performing. And does it all go away, and you're just in the moment right then?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's just once you kind of step on stage, it's just kind of like a bubble. And
Yeah.
it's just, you kind of stay in that bubble until you're done. And some shows are shorter than others, some are longer. Sometimes you're there for 20 minutes, sometimes you're there for 4 hours. But, it's probably the best bubble to be in because at that point in time, nothing really else, you're not thinking about anything else. You're just kind of in the moment and nothing really else matters. You're like, okay, this is going to be a great, hour and a half, and we're just going to have fun. And that's my number one thing, is just to have fun with it, because I used to suffer from a lot of stage fright, and I just used to overthink, and I used to, just not be able to perform my best because I was so nervous, and it just wasn't as enjoyable, for me as it should have been. And I kind of had to work through all that, but it is so much better now that I'm like, okay, I can breathe, I can have fun. And it's not that I wasn't having fun before, but you get stuck in your head and you're like, oh, well, what if I don't hit this note? What if I don't, do this, perfectly like I did in practice or whatever? And it's just, at the end of the day, is have fun. No one's gonna care. Everyone's probably drinking anyways where you're at. If you're playing a bar, everyone's too drunk to notice the note that you just missed, sort of thing. So it's like, just go out and have fun, give them a show. And I think that that is probably one of the best pieces of advice that I could ever give anyone that is struggling with stage fright too. Like, just have fun, man. Just get out of your head and go have a blast.
You said something earlier that I did want to ask you about, is because I've seen this
Mhm.
where the artist or band will get a 20-minute set and it's not negotiable. Because some of the things I do, I'm very closely plugged in because I have to introduce you all for some of these events. And when they say 20 minutes, it's 20 minutes. So I was
Mhm.
curious, is it difficult? Is it more difficult to bring the energy for 20 minutes versus getting an hour and being able to build and engage with the audience? Is it harder actually to perform a shorter set than a longer set?
I think it depends on the material that you're performing.
Yeah.
Um, for me, I love live shows, and those, like I said, those are my bread and butter.
Yeah.
So therefore, I love energetic songs. I love upbeat songs. Country and rock are my two loves, and so meshing them together, you can probably be like, okay, well, that's probably going to be upbeat. That's going to be high energy, and so I think that for the shorter sets, it's actually easier for me because I can just give it all in 20 minutes and then I'm done. Versus having to give it all for an hour and a half, and then after the show you're like, I can't move. But it just depends, I think, on the music. I think for me, shorter sets are easier just because they just don't require as much energy. You
Yeah.
don't really have to think about as much as, oh, I'm only playing maybe 4 or 5 songs, really, so it's not too crazy, unless you're playing 4-hour sets and you're like, oh man, I got about 60 songs here that I got to be on the ball for every single one. And
Right. Right.
with me, it's high energy with me, so I'm like, well, that's a long one. So
I have to ask, how did COVID in 2020 affect your art? Or because some artists I've talked to, it really impacted them. Some artists, it really didn't. It was just a blip in the radar. They were in certain parts of the country that approached COVID differently than other parts of the country. Some artists are like, look, if I can't get 2021 going, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to do this. How was your experience, Savannah?
yeah, my experience was pretty interesting in the fact that my last show that I played in 2020 was the San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo, which I was super blessed to be able to play because I've been going there since I was a kid. And so it was my first time playing, and so I was so pumped and so excited. And I was super excited because after the San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo, I actually had the Houston Rodeo booked, which is our biggest rodeo in Texas, and it's a big deal if you're in Texas. And
Yes,
so,
it is.
yeah, it's probably one of the biggest deals next to the Texas State Fair. But I played the San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo, had a blast. It was, I think, like February 18th, and I was a couple days away actually from leaving for the Houston one. And I just got a call like a day and a half before, right before I was going to leave. And they're like, it's not going on anymore. And I think Maren Morris was the last person to perform. And then it got shut down. And so that kind of created this huge snowball effect for all of the other shows that I had planned for the year, and every single thing got canceled. And I was supposed to be on the road for about 250 days out of the year, and it went from 250 days to absolutely zero. And so that was a shock. And that was absolutely the worst, just seeing everything get canceled until, there was nothing left, and your year is just kind of one big giant question mark. And so we kind of had to go back to the drawing board and figure out, what I wanted to do and, what we could do at that point in time. And so, like, what do you do with all this time off? Well, we came up with the answer of no time off, taking no time off during this time off, really writing and focusing on getting new material, getting into the recording studio as much as possible, just coming up with new music, social media, obviously creating that really big online presence as much as I could, doing live streams, doing, little online concerts, anything just to keep things updated and
Right.
keep things, keep the ball rolling. That way, when things did go back to normal and, things start opening back up, we could just hit the ground running instead of, waiting all that time, not doing anything. And, oh, everything's open now. Like, oh, wait, I have no music. Oh, wait, like everyone's kind of just unfollowed me, forgotten about me sort of thing, because I haven't been doing anything, And so we wanted to make sure that I had things to, as soon as things started open, hit the ground running, get the ball rolling, that sort of thing. So I could just be right there and ready when things started to go back to normal.
Awesome. So, you adapted and overcome, which kind of leads me to, what I want to talk about next is with the military. It's my understanding that you come from a military family and that you perform the national anthem and other patriotic things. What's that like, coming from a military family?
Yeah, I think coming from a military family on both sides, both my mom and my dad's sides, just it kind of instills in you just kind of a different set of values. I think that maybe if you don't come from a military family, it may be more difficult to understand those set of values, or just, even be exposed to those set of values. You understand the value of hard work. You understand, morality, and you understand what it means to be, American, and what it means to be free, and, to give gratitude and thanks to the people that help make that possible for us. And I think that it kind of makes me sad. I feel like nowadays that's been very lost, and I don't really know why, but somehow we just kind of descended into this just chaotic mess, disaster, whatever you want to call it. But I think that, a lot of people don't get to appreciate, the military like I think people that are a part of the military do.
One of the things that, when I talk to an artist like yourself,
Mhm.
there's a lot of my fellow veterans and myself to a degree who are trying to do, something on the side or a new career focus in the arts,
Right.
whether it's being a country rock artist like yourself, whether it's photography, you know, cinematography, whatever.
Sure.
They're trying to get started. And, this is where I'm like, well, you might be 22, but you've done this for half your life.
Mhm.
And a lot of us get out of the military, kind of bounce around, we start this up, and there's a lot of frustration, a lot of grind there. And a lot of us tend to get bogged down or just say, I'm going to do something else. And they kick themselves a couple of years later that they should have kept in it.
Right.
what do you say to somebody, military or not, but I'm looking at the veteran focus, the person served our country, came back home, said, you know what, I want to start singing, got a guitar, started doing this, and realized how hard it was. And they're on that cusp of, do I keep doing this or do I just pack it in? Is there
Sure.
anything you would tell them?
Honestly, I would say serving in the military is a lot more difficult than being a singer and doing what I do. I would think it's a different thing for sure. When you're in music, it is a business and it is an industry that is extremely cutthroat, and it can be pretty hard at times and it can be really discouraging for sure. I mean, I'm no expert, but I have been doing this, half my life. And so I've been around the block. Like I said, I've done all different types of genres. And so I've seen a lot, I've learned a lot, and I've probably made more mistakes than I have made successes and wins. But with those mistakes, I learned a lot from them, and you can kind of keep learning. And I think that to anybody who may be struggling with that aspect of things, oh, do I want to, continue to do this? Oh, do I, is this worth it, sort of thing? Like, this is maybe not for me. This is kind of difficult, whatever that may be. I think that kind of just stick it out for a little bit while longer. You never really know. I think that those hilarious stories that you hear about just really successful artists, sometimes that they'll tell, they're like, oh, I was 3 days away from throwing in the towel, sort of thing. And then I got the call that changed my life and whatnot. It's one of those stories that are just so cool to me that I'm like, see, that's why you never want to quit. And that's why you always kind of want to give it your all, and it's times like, oh, well, I'll just go do this little karaoke thing. I'll go do this little open mic thing. It's not going to turn into anything, but I might as well do it. And then that's when you meet someone that changes your life, sort of thing. And it's like, you never really know what could happen next. And I think that that is kind of the guiding light for me as an artist. It's not guaranteed. Nothing is. You never really know. It's like, release a song, everyone could hate it. Well, all right, go back to the drawing board.
Right.
It's just, you never really know what could happen. So I would hate for anyone to give up their passion, give up their love, and lose the passion, lose the love, for music, because of how difficult this industry can be. Because at the end of the day, I think that it is worth it.
Absolutely. No, it's a common thing that I hear is, and you might say the military is a more difficult job. I'm not going to disagree with you, but there is the aspect where artists and military people have to constantly adapt. We're constantly moving.
Right.
You got to be there on time. You can't miss a studio session. There's a lot at stake in terms of a person's career. So I think the theme you're telling me is the same: is to find a way to persevere and stick with it.
Right.
I think it's important.
Exactly.
I think it's important.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, I think that is number one out of everything. I think that there's this saying that I always kind of rings in my mind, is that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And it's just keep going that extra mile, keep, putting in 110% sort of thing, because you never know what can happen if you just, like you said, persevere. I mean, speak things into existence, but also take the actions to go and make those things reality, and I think that it'll happen for sure. And you're going to get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm doing something right here.
All right. So we're going to end this on kind of a light note. I live in New England, and a lot of New Englanders have no idea how one large Texas is, or how different certain places in Texas are. So hypothetically, I have a friend of mine from Boston flying in San Antonio. Where should that person go? Not the obvious tourist stuff like the Alamo, but where would Savannah tell them to go to have a really authentic Texas time?
I'm actually going to say the Alamo is one, because the Alamo is just Texas. Okay,
it is right. That's one thing.
Texas. I have an ancestor that actually fought in the Alamo. His name is on the photograph outside. Yes. His name was Jesse McCoy.
Oh, okay. Well, now wait a minute. Now, Savannah, you got to come back on. We can have a whole episode just on that. You
I
didn't tell me
know.
that.
Yeah, I am a daughter of the Republic of Texas, and so and we have all that on my side of the family. It's really, really cool.
Will you come back on?
Yes,
Will you talk
please.
to me about?
I'd love to talk about the Alamo.
Oh, okay. Whew. I didn't had. Okay. Anyway, so the Alamo, yes, we're both in agreement, absolutely. And I gotta tell you, I was glad when people pounded those people who defaced the Alamo like 10 years ago. That was the right thing to do. I mean, no
Oh, for
question.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure. There
Yeah.
were so many threats of defacing the Alamo over the past couple of years. And, the Daughters of the Republic of Texas and all these various little organizations, we stood outside and, guarded it, because it's like, that's a piece of history right there. That's
sacred.
It really is, especially in Texas. I mean, it's
Right.
sacred for the entirety of the U.S., but especially in Texas, that's like our child.
Right. So Alamo's number one. We're both in agreement there. We got a lot to unpack there. What's next?
So the Alamo is number one, I would always say. The Riverwalk is cool just for that, San Antonio experience. I only really go down there rarely because there's so many people down there. It's like Austin's 6th Street or Nashville's Broadway. It's
Right.
that there's so many people, but it's really cool to experience, and I say that the food is probably our number one draw to San Antonio. We have the best Tex-Mex and we have some incredible barbecue.
No argument with Tex-Mex. I tell people, well, no. This is not Tex-Mex. We got to go to San Antonio. So no argument there. Awesome.
My last name is Garza, so take it from me.
No argument. I believe you.
We have some great Tex-Mex down in San Antonio. I would also say that we have some really, really great music venues down there. Some very, very iconic ones. We have Billy Bob's in Fort Worth. We have Gillies. We have Floor's Country Store out in San Antonio. We have places like Green Hall, which is on my bucket list to play. We have some incredible artists in Texas that are always playing constantly. And I think that one of the draws to Texas is just the Texas country music. It's just kind of like, oops, my okay, there we go. I think it paused for a second. But yeah, aside from that, I mean, we just have so much history in Texas. We're very different state, I would say, than a lot of them. We came about in a very different way, and we are huge, I will say. Once you go to, I think it's what is it, Texarkana, yep, to El Paso, and you see like that sign of 857 miles to El Paso, and you're just like, wow, that is one large state.
Well, I rode my motorcycle from Arizona to Boston, and from El Paso to Houston was like 900 miles.
It's so long. Right? It takes 12 hours to get in and out of Texas.
Absolutely. So the single dropping on July 23rd is Typical Texas Girl by Savannah Rae. Savannah, how can people find you? I'm going to have the links to all your social media stuff in the show post, but tell people how they can check you out.
Sure. I mean, you can find me Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Everything is at the Savannah Rae, just the Savannah Rae. And my website is thesavannahrae.com. And then anything else is just Savannah Rae. I mean, it's really easy to find me. You just type in Savannah RAE and you're good to go.
There you have it, folks. I'm going to have all the links in the show post. You can check it out. The single drops on July 23rd. You shouldn't miss it. I can't wait to see what you do next. And I am absolutely stoked. She's coming back on to talk about the Alamo. That's awesome. I can't wait. I'm sorry. I shouldn't get excited, but I can't help it. I am.
Me too.
So we're winding down. I always like talking to artists, and I don't mind the fact that they're civilian, because in a way they have to adapt to life and work and what they're trying to do, just like us veterans do. And there's a lot of veteran artists out there who are making it just like Savannah. Thank you so much for coming on Oscar Mike Radio.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Awesome. As we say in Oscar Mike Radio, we are mission in flight.